So we just got finished talking about what aggression is and the sex differences that occur and why they occur. What we need to move on now is how we measure it in the lab. Now, aggression, I just want to be clear that the way aggression works is there are trait and there are state measures. So let's define those terms. So trait basically means like a personality construct. So I'm sure we all know of aggressive people, all right? And that's a personality. Now, how we assess someone's personality is what you see in front of you. It's just typical questionnaires that measure one's kind of constitutional level of how aggressive you are. So I'm sure you know some people who are just really rude, aggressive people, whereas you know others who are just like they would never hurt a fly. Well, that is a personality construct, right? That's with you. That's a part of you, and this is the only way to really assess that is via self-report measures of aggression. So these are measures that assess things like, once again, this personality construct. So if you look at some of these items, you can kind of see, like, look at this first one. Once in a while, I can't control the urge to strike another person. All right. So these, and so what you do is you answer all these, and then you sum them up, and you can see at the top on the rating scale, it describes like how characteristic or uncharacteristic of me are these items. And you would expect people high on trait aggression would score relatively high on like question 1, for example. And so this is the way we do it at the trait level, but at the state level, it's a little more difficult. All right. So at the state level, what we have to do is figure out an ethical way to assess behaviors that aren't too extreme. So we already talked about this on exam 1, where when we talk about measuring the dependent variable, ethically, like I said, I can't give people like a knife and say, hey, that person next door to you provoked you, go. Or I can't give them a gun. Or I can't be like, hey, I'm going to simulate a fight and I want to see how many times you punch someone. Like, I can't do that. So what we have to do is we have to get out a way that this works. So how do we measure state-based aggression? State, let's define that term. That's different than trait. Trait's personality. State means like behavior right now as it happens. And the way it works is, at least experimentally, state variables are amendable to change based on some of the stuff I do. Trait variables should not change. So let me give you an example. In my lab, I provoke people. So if I provoked you, that shouldn't change your personality. All right, that should not change your traits, but it should change your state level of aggression. Right. So and also besides the ethical component of this, there's also a face validity problem where I can't. I have to be kind of. You have to kind of hide the true intention of the measure that you're using. And finally, one issue with this is you have to make people think they're interacting with a partner. Sometimes they really are. Most of the time we use confederates, but you have to make them assume they're working with someone else to aggress against that person. Because remember, aggression is defined as behavior intended to harm someone else. So you need to have that someone else present. All right, so let's talk. The most widely used way is the TAP, or the Taylor aggression paradigm. It's actually, we'll get to that in a sec. So participants think they're doing something with a partner. And basically what happens is somehow they get provoked. There's a lot of different ways we can provoke people in the lab. The method of provocation is inconsequential to this, but you just provoke some people. And then, but the provocation has to come from the person they're working with. And then what's going to happen is they get to play a game. All right. And it's a reaction time game. And then you get to give shocks to people, all right? So, however, it's very Milgram-esque, if you will, but let's be clear. A lot of people don't use the shocking piece anymore. Instead, they've adapted this to what's called the CRT, or the competitive reaction time task. And so let me draw for you, this is some room. Here's what the CRT looks like. So basically, it's a computer program where this is your computer screen, okay? This is the keyboard. What you're going to see is on the left side here, you're going to see a bar of it's going to go from 10 at the top, 0 on the bottom. And then what's going to happen is you're going to see a little screen here. And over headphones, okay, what's going to happen is you're going to hear, whenever you hear like a blink sound. So it'll go blink. Whenever you hear that sound, you have to be the first person to move your mouse and click this little X. All right. Now the way it works is, if you win, you get to give a shock, or we don't use shocks anymore. You get to give a noise blast. If you lose, you receive a noise blast. A noise blast is basically, this is going to really date me, but back in my childhood, before HD TV and satellite TV and all those things, we had cable. And what happened was, if you turned your TV to a station you didn't have, it would be all staticky and make white noise. It'd be like, all right, that's the sound you give. Now, what's happening here with the 0 to 10, that is the decibel level of the sounds that you're, of the noise blast you're giving or that you're receiving. So what happens is, let's go through this. What happens is, first you pick on this scale from 0 to 10, you pick what noise blast you want to give your partner if they lose and you win. All right? And then you play the game, and then you either get, then it either says you won or it says you lost. If you won, you give the noise blast. If you lose, you receive it. And what's going to happen is, then you rinse and repeat that process over and over again. The CRT actually has 25 trials. All right. So what's going to happen then is the dependent variable is going to be the intensity of the shock. So, or the intensity of the noise blast. 0 is a very low decibel. It's like a whisper. A 10 is pretty loud. I forget the actual decibel number, but it's not going to like break your eardrum or anything, but it's very loud and uncomfortable. All right. Now the question then becomes, does this match our definition of aggression? And so if we're defining aggression as behavior intended to harm someone, then the question is this aggression? Well, a couple things have to occur. First, like the Milgram study, the participant has to hear the intensity of the shocks themselves. And so we do that. We always make sure that happens. So check. So we know it's going to hurt them. The second thing is it a behavior? And clearly it is. This is the most widely used measure of aggression to assess aggressive behavior in the lab. It correlates with trait measures of aggression. So highly aggressive people are more likely to give higher intense shocks than low aggressive people. And it's amendable to our manipulations in the lab. So what that means is provoked people give higher intense shocks than non-provoked people. Males give this more than females, although that's not a manipulated variable. Things like that. So it's a very good measure. But it's not the only one. I want to bring up this one because it's just really creative. It's called the hot sauce paradigm. Participants, what they do here is they come into the lab and they're told that they're going to do a food tasting study with a partner. But they're always told that they're not going to see their partner. It's the same with the CRT2. You can't actually see the partner that you're working with because there's really no partner, right? So they're just told, oh, they're in another room. All right. So you're told that you're doing this with a partner. You're in another room. Then what happens is you told them that you're doing a food tasting study. So you fill out a little survey about, do you like spicy foods? Do you like sweet, savory foods? Do you like sweet foods? Do you like salty foods? Right. And you rate that on a scale of 1 to 5, and everyone's different. Like, I hate spicy food personally. All right. But I love salty foods, for example. So you would fill this out. And what happens is the researcher leaves and comes back and says, this is the food rating scale from your partner. And it gives them to you. And it's very clear that your partner does not like spicy foods at all. All right. Then what's going to happen is the partner gets provoked. So this is the original study that did this. I'm going to show you a study where I modified this in a little bit. But in the original study, as a part of this food tasting thing, the way it worked was you and your partner get to trade foods. So first, you are going to consume something that your Confederate partner gave you to consume. And that's where the provocation comes into play. So some participants who did not get provoked got to drink just orange juice. And orange juice is delightful. It's yummy, it's sugary, it's great. That's not the provocation. Other participants were randomly assigned to get orange juice diluted with vinegar. And that, if you ever, I can't even stand the smell of vinegar, let alone if you taste vinegar, it tastes awful. All right, so some people had to drink that. And remember, this is from their partner. Now what happens is, okay, you just consumed your drink and you're either really pissed off or not. And what's going to happen then is you get to give some hot sauce for your partner to eat. So basically you're given a cup and you're given like hot chili sauce. And what's going to happen is how much of the hot chili sauce you put in the cup, presumably you think your partner is going to eat. And so then the question is, and then the weight of the cup is our measure of aggressive behavior. So the question is, does this measure aggression? And it does, right? If it's behavior intended to harm someone, not only do they not like spicy foods, but one thing I didn't make clear that I should have explicitly is that the participants themselves had to try the hot sauce first, just a little bit of it, so they know how hot it is, right? So is it behavior? Yes. Are you intending to harm someone? Yes. Do they want to avoid that harm? Yeah, because they don't like spicy foods. All right. So these are good measures of aggressive behavior in the lab. Now the question is, can we ethically measure violence? All right. Remember, the violence is the thing that's going to put you in the hospital. And I'm going to tell you the answer is no, but people have gotten close. All right. So the first is, there's two measures here that I wanted to bring up. The first is the bug killing paradigm. What happens is participants get to put bugs in a grinder and kill them. So the grinder is basically like a little handheld thing. You put little bugs in it and you grind it up. And you have to do this for several minutes. And the number of bugs that you grind up equals, as these authors claim, a measure of violence or aggression. I want to say, though, that there's no bugs that are actually killed. So what's going to happen is, unbeknown to the participant, there's actually a little trap door. So the bugs fall into this little canister that's the grinder. It's the big canister, and it's covered in black, so the participants can't see in. What happens is you drop these bugs in, and the bugs are able to escape. So so like PETA would be all over this, but there's no bugs actually killed. All right. Now, is this a measure of aggression or violence? And the answer is, to me, is clearly no, although I like where they're getting at. All right. And it's not, because killing a person versus killing a bug are very different things. Like if I see a spider, I'll step on that spider, no problem, but I don't feel bad about it. But if I kill a person, I would just be traumatized for life about that. So, you got to think, like, what are we doing here? Well, you're killing something. And that was kind of what they were getting at. But it's not the same thing as killing a human. All right. So even though they're trying, and I get what they're trying to do, this is actually not a good measure of aggression or violence. Because if we're defining that as aggression as defined as intending to harm, behavior intended to harm someone who's motivated to avoid that harm, this gets really dicey with what a bug is motivated to do. Like, yes, natural instincts I get dictate, like if someone's trying to step on you, the bug runs away. Like that's just animal instincts. Every animal has that ability. But are you like actually cognitively motivated to do that? And I don't think bugs have the brain power to do that. Right? And this gets into a really gray area. Like, okay, fine, we get it. It does not measure violence. But what happens if, let's say ethically, and I'm glad we can't do this, but ethically, let's say we put cats in a grinder and do the same thing? Well, you can make the argument that cats have a higher brain power than a bug. And so maybe they do have some sort of motivation, albeit I don't know how we measure that. So it gets complicated in a hurry. All right. But needless to say, let's go back to this. This is not a valid way to assess killing, violence, or aggression. Although I get what this paradigm is trying to do, it's not doing it exactly. All right, so let's end this video there. We got one more violent paradigm to talk about.